Good evening, everyone. We were discussing the laws of the Amidah. In the Rosh and the Tshuva writes that after the Amidah, we famously do the Hazara, the repetition. He writes, if there's not 9 people answering Amen to the Hazara, it's considered a blessing in vain for the Hazan. So therefore, we all are participating in such a big sin. Haz v'shalom, if we don't answer to the Hazara, Baruch Hashem, Arminyan, I can say proudly, we made a lot of improvement in the Minha and the Arvit, and we don't talk during Hazara. This is something to be, something to applaud. But definitely, the Siman Kuf Chav Dalet, Shulchan Aruch writes that a person has to be answering. You have to have 9 people answering at least, and if not, Hazan is making bracha lebatala. And it's for our sake. Hazan is actually, Arizal says that during the Hazara is when it's considered a communal prayer. That's when all our personal prayers are getting uplifted together as one and represented as a tzibur. So therefore, the more important part of the prayers is actually the Hazara, more important than your private Amidah. Would you ever think to speak during the private Amidah? Haz v'shalom. Who would ever do such a thing? That's how we have to feel when we do the Hazara as well. As the Ramah even brings that a person should preferably stand. The Ramah brings the custom of standing during the Hazara to give it more attention and give it more seriousness. But technically, technically you could sit if you need to, but preferably it would be better to stand and to listen to the Hazara. And Shulchan Aruch writes that whoever speaks, shmoozes with his friend during Hazara, Gadol anvo minso. It is too great of a sin to burden, to carry. The person doesn't realize how much of a negative thing he does to himself and to the community. The person's not just hurting himself, he's hurting the Hazara, he's hurting the prayer. Now the prayer won't be as accepted because he was speaking. So therefore we have an obligation as friends to all get together and say, we have to go and shush people who talk, and we have to make it a serious thing. We make it very serious. Your loved one passed away. You don't make your shvo. Oh, God forbid. You go and you're going to have your son got engaged. You're not going to make a l'chaim. Well, what does that mean? So you come to Hazara. You're going to talk. How can you talk during Hazara? There's no such thing. Person has to be serious about it and not say, whatever, it's okay. Who am I? So a lot of times we have a false sense of humility. Who am I to say? What's the big deal? Oh, let them be. No. Person has to know that if we all stand up and more people care not to speak during Hazara, the people who do speak during Hazara, they're going to feel uncomfortable. They're going to say, wow, everybody doesn't want to speak during Hazara. I have to follow the group. But if majority of people don't care, so then it becomes a madhouse. It becomes a social club. Haz v'shalom. We don't want Bet Knesset, especially Shabbat. Shabbat is the number one time where we have the ability to get the most powerful prayers. Shabbat, all the prayers go up for the entire week. During Hazara, the private prayers go up, but during Shabbat, all the prayers of the week go up. So therefore, on Shabbat, how much more so we have to make sure that people don't speak. A lot of times there's people who try to find one corner of the room where the cool people sit and they like to schmooze over there. The person has to make sure that he's not part of such a thing and doesn't allow for such a thing. Especially the Gabbai, especially the Rabbi, especially people who are busy doing mitzvot. They shouldn't go and think it's okay to speak during Hazara because I'm involved with a mitzvah related thing. Even learning during Hazara is not allowed. The Poskim write, Piskei Teshuvot quotes, and Rav Chaim Kanievsky writes the same thing. Person who's learning, doing Shnai Mikra during Hazara, his mitzvah becomes 0. It's considered a sin. You're not supposed to be doing anything besides for answering Baruch Hu Baruch Shemo and saying Amen during Hazara. So therefore, we have all an obligation to make our prayers go up. We have to make sure in our Bet Knesset, you could speak. Speak to who? Speak to Hashem. Or speak outside in the hallway to your friend, but we don't speak during Hazara. That has to become a standard. It's not a nice thing. It's a must. It's a must. Basic necessity. There's a nice story where there was a Jew who was renting from a goy, and he had a lot of debt. He didn't pay his rent in a long time. So he had a balance sheet on one paper how much he paid and how much he owes. So he called him for a meeting. The goy called him for a meeting. He was very nervous. He said to his wife, I don't know if we're going to come back home. He's so mad at me. I didn't pay all my rent. So he goes and he sits. He's sitting with him in his room and in the goy's house in front of the fireplace. And the goy was fed up. He was screaming, yelling, how can you not pay? He looks at the balance sheet. All of a sudden, he got zachmat. He said, you know what? I'm going to have mercy on you. He says, and I'm going to go and I'm going to now look at the paper and we're going to start fresh. And he went and he threw the paper in the fire. He threw the paper in the fire and he had mercy on him. But which paper did he throw? He threw the paper how much he owes. And he goes and he's going to keep, I'm going to throw away this paper. I'm going to keep this paper. And he kept the paper how much he paid. And he thought that how much he paid is how much he owes, much less. He went home and he said to his wife, well, you don't understand a miracle. He threw out one paper, he kept one paper, and I'm going to pay my very little. But what's going to be? He's going to realize his mistake. He's going to realize that I owe him much more. So he went to his rabbi. He said, Rabbi, what do I do? He said, listen, don't worry. He's a goy, right? Yeah, he's a goy. He said, does he pray Amidah? He never prays Amidah. So he's never going to remember anyways. Don't worry. He said, since he doesn't pray Amidah, when does a person remember a lot of things? When does a person's mind wander? He says, during Amidah, during Hazara, his mind is wandering. He's thinking about things. He doesn't pray Amidah. He's a goy. So if he's not going to remember, don't worry. So therefore, a lot of times, we have to catch ourselves not to be like that person. That Chas v'sholom, during Hazara, we wander, we're on our phone. During the Amidah, we're thinking about business, thinking about what do you have to do later. We have very few times we speak to Hashem each day. But let's take this time preciously and use it wisely. Baruch Adonai Olam. Amen.